Good afternoon, and welcome to this panel on the role of a circular economy in climate neutrality. My name is Francisco Rodriguez. I am the director of the Urban Transformation Lab in Tecnalia Research and Innovation, and I will be moderating the afternoon sessions. As the EU steps to its ambition to become the first climate-neutral continent by 2050, the circular economy has emerged as a key pillar of this policy framework. The European Green Deal, the Circular Economy Action Plan, and more recently, the EU Industrial Strategy all position circularity as essential to decarbonizing our economies, reducing dependency on raw materials, and fostering long-term resilience. These policies call for deep transformations, not just in how we produce and consume, but in how territories are structured and governed. As we continue to explore pathways to climate-neutral territories, the concept of a circular economy stands out not only as an environmental imperative, but also as a territorial challenge and opportunity. The shift from a linear take, make, dispose model to a circular approach where resources are preserved, reused, and cycled back into the economy is essential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, especially those embedded in materials and industrial processes. But this transition doesn't occur in a vacuum. It's deeply embedded in territorial context, in how places are designed, connected, governed, and inhabited. This is precisely the focus of the CIRCTAR project developed by ESPON. CIRCTAR and its recent update bring a territorial lens to circularity. They explore how material flows, waste generation, and resource consumption vary across cities, regions, and rural areas. Using updated regional indicators and data stories, the project reveals how circular economy strategies such as industrial symbiosis, smart logistics, and place-based clustering manifest differently in capital cities, secondary towns, and rural areas. Crucially, it shows that circularity is not only a technical or environmental issue, but one with significant territorial, economic, and social dimensions. The updated work under Response Climate Neutral Territories program takes this further by identifying region-specific pathways and challenges. From circular rural-urban linkages to strategies for clustering circular activity, it provides grounded evidence on how circularity can be accelerated and aligned with climate neutrality goals. At the same time, the OECD has played a pivotal role in supporting local and regional governments in adopting circular economy frameworks. Their work emphasizes governance models, financing mechanisms, and capacity-building approaches that can empower cities to become innovation hubs for circular solutions. Today, our panel brings together experts who have deeply engaged in these questions, from the analytical frameworks to implementation on the ground. They will help us unpack how circularity can become a practical and place-sensitive lever for climate neutrality. This will be a dynamic conversation aimed at engaging not only our panel, but also all of you. We warmly invite you to participate through the Slido, submit your questions at any time, and vote those you find most relevant. We'll make sure to bring them into the discussion. We are joined today by Dr. Marco Bianchi, a senior researcher at Tecnalia, where he leads work on circular economy and climate-neutral development strategies. With a PhD in applied economics and sensitive expertise in spatial modeling and sustainability assessment, Marco has contributed to major EU research projects under Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe. His work bridges economics and environmental science and has played a key role in ESPON projects such as CIRCTAR and Tandem, focusing on regional circularity, material flows, and decentralized energy transition. Alongside him is Ander Eyzaguirre, policy analyst at the OECD, where he coordinates the organization's contribution to the Circular Cities and Regions Initiative for the European Commission. His work centers on circular economy governance at local and regional levels, based on extensive policy dialogue with over 15 countries. With a background in economics and EU policy, Ander brings deep insights into how cities and regions can implement circular strategies aligned with broader climate goals. To get our discussion started, we'll begin with a first round of questions for our guests. After their responses, we'll open the floor to your questions via Slido. So please feel free to start submitting them now. As mentioned earlier, we'll select and address the most insightful ones during the session. Let's begin, Marco, with the first question for you. So, what role, Marco, does the circular economy play in climate neutrality, and how does circular economy and climate neutrality connect?
Thank you, Francisco, for this interesting question. Well, before digging into the role of circular economy for climate neutrality, I would like to provide some simple facts, simple evidence. So here you can see the correlation between greenhouse gas emission on the x-axis and the material consumption on the y-axis. And we can see that there is a strong correlation between these two indicators. We can say that greenhouse gas emissions go hand in hand with material consumption, and this is not by chance. We know that industrial activities are mainly responsible for CO2 emission, for example, and in Europe, more than 40% of greenhouse gas emissions are due to material-intensive economic activities. This is another visual that makes the point. We can see the two indicators, domestic material consumption on the left side and greenhouse gas emission on the right side. And again, we see strong similarities between these two maps. Couple of exemplary examples. Andalusia in Spain is one of the biggest emitter in terms of greenhouse gas emission, and equally is one of the biggest economy in the agriculture sector, having more than 9 billion gross value added coming from agriculture, forestry, and other primary sector. And another case, for example, in Italy, the Lombardy region in the northern Italy is again one of the biggest polluters in terms of greenhouse gas emission at European level, and at the same time is one of the biggest economy within the industrial sector. So this couple of examples make the point on the very tight link between greenhouse gas emission and the type of industrial activities emitting CO2 or other greenhouse gas. That is why integrating circular economy principle within our economy can be a very strong lever toward carbon neutrality. So the circular economy operates through three different main axes. One is the reduction of primary resources through, for example, use of secondary raw material. Then trying to extending as much as possible the useful life of product, so keeping material within our economy system as long as possible. And the third one is reducing waste. Through these three axes, what the circular economy is striving for is to improve our production and consumption system, trying to decoupling the growth of the economy from the material consumption, resource consumption. Thereby, if we are able to improve our production and consumption system through better processes or reducing primary extraction, which is high greenhouse gas intensive, we are also able to progress toward carbon neutrality. And indeed, the European Commission is expecting that through the implementation of a circular solution, we will be able to reduce between 20 and 25% greenhouse gas emission by 2050. At least these are the estimates that we are handling for the time being.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And this correlation between material consumption and carbon emissions is very evident and makes things very evident. Given this strong correlation, is there any low-hanging fruit? I mean, is there any material or any sector that is paramount to address in the short term to gain or to maximize the benefits?
Well, I think that for sure I would stress the importance of the electric and electronic equipment because of the transition we are experiencing nowadays. So we have this strong ambition to phase out fossil fuel and at the same time reaching this carbon neutrality that will achieve through in a significant part through the electricity, generation of electricity through renewable energy. So this type of transition required a large amount of electronic and electric equipment and the embedded critical raw material. So I expect that the Circular Economy Act that will be published soon and during the next year, it already foreseen a pillar on this specific topic. Why? Because the e-waste is the waste stream that is growing at the fastest speed, 2% per year. It is quite a lot. Unfortunately, the e-waste is only recycled up to 40%, which is very, very low. So we should be able in the future to better address, to improve the collection and recycling system of this type of waste and try to create a market for secondary material and also for the critical raw material embedded in that waste. So I expect that this will be one of the more relevant streams of material in the next few years.
Yeah, and I'm sure that we will see them. Yeah. Ander, let's go to your experience. So given this experience that you have in OECD, why is it important that cities and regions move towards circular economy?
Thank you, Francisco. Well, cities play a key role in the transition as they are major consumers of resources in the EU. So by 2050, it's expected that urban population will reach 7 billion, representing 70% of population. And when we look at the European Union, this number will represent 84%. So this will represent an issue for cities, which will have an effect on the infrastructure, on the service, the use of resources, and this will make also cities hubs for the production, for consumption, and waste generation. So already today, cities are responsible for 70% of greenhouse gas emissions. They are also responsible for 75% of the energy use, and they account for between 50% and 70% of the total waste generation. So additionally, cities are also the places that are the most exposed to environmental risk, like air pollution or water and resource scarcity. So all these reasons make them also, to be part of the problem. However, due to their economic profile and their governance structure, cities are also part of the solution. They hold key competencies for the transition towards a circular economy. So, for instance, they are responsible overall for the management and the treatment of waste. They are also responsible for land use, urban planning, and they also have the capacity to update regulations for the built environment, for instance, to promote an efficient use of resources. And in addition to that, the circular economy is not can also bring benefits to the cities. So, for instance, projections show that adopting a circular economy approach to the built environment sector in Amsterdam, for example, could save up to 500,000 tons of CO2 per year. In London, adopting a circular economy approach to some key sectors of the city, like food, textile, and also built environment, could yield £7 billion annually. And additionally, the circular economy can also bring jobs to cities and regions. For instance, in Île-de-France, the region of Paris, it's expected that 50,000 jobs will be created thanks and as a consequence of the circular economy transition. One of the key aspects also of the city is the scale, making them laboratories for testing and scaling up solutions. So they have a really particular diversity of factors. They have also the proximity and also the density. So this makes them the ideal place to test solutions and to scale them back. And also they have the responsibility, and they have an important tool, which is the public procurement. Public procurement represents 12% of the GDP of OECD countries. And by making use of this tool, these cities can have an influence on the consumption. They can aim for product as a service models. They can also aim to change the behavior of the population. And I also wanted to highlight the social aspect of the circular economy. This is about the circular economy will create jobs, will also help support low-income and more vulnerable groups. And additionally, it can be a way to give access to more affordable goods. So, for instance, through the circular economy, repaired or second-hand goods could be more affordable for people, because usually these products tend to be cheaper than the new ones. And also through other new business models like the renting, the leasing, and so on. It can be also an opportunity to be more inclusive and give greater access to vulnerable groups in how accessing these products and services. And the social aspect is particularly relevant for cities, because we know that in cities, inequalities tend to be higher than in rural areas, and these inequalities also tend to be more visible. However, I wanted to also highlight that they cannot act alone. They need to have the adequate regulatory and the adequate financial framework at the national level, at the EU level, but they also need to boost and to do it together with the business sector, for instance, which can drive innovation, and also with the consumers, which also have a power to change the consuming habits and the consumption patterns.
I will take your last point, your very last point, for my next question to you, because it is true that cities seems to be at the core of the transformation regarding circular economy. But again, they need to operate within a framework, and they need to incorporate the views of different stakeholders, from vulnerable citizens that you mentioned to the different economic operators. So this multi-level governance, or this governance fragmentation, is also a challenge in itself. Are there any experience that you know where governance fragmentation seriously slowed down circular initiatives, and there are lessons to learn from that experiences?
Yeah, sure. Well, the need for a policy coherence is one of the main dimensions that we are aiming for from the OECD perspective. From our experience working with cities and regions, we have observed two main problems for the lack of coherence. First is the limited understanding on the circular economy at the subnational level. And sometimes we have seen that it is often, let's say, a task which is allocated to the waste management department, which is perceived as an extra work. So at the end, public officials, which already have responsibilities for the waste management, they have their targets, they work on the circular economy as an extra when they have available resources, which it's at the end a missed opportunity. And at the same time, sometimes it's also perceived as an additional priority for the municipality or for the region, right? So we have cities with a strategy on the environment, on the energy, on innovation, and many cities, those which are starting to be advanced, they have launched a strategy on the circular economy. However, we believe and we defend that the circular economy should be something transversal, and it should be a means to an end, right? So the end is not to be a circular city, because this is not clearly the objective, and it's not even clear what's the definition of a circular city. However, it's important that governments, when they design these policies, design the policies in a way that they do a bit of reflection on how the circular economy can contribute to the local objectives. Could be carbon neutrality, could be reducing waste management and generation.
Thank you, Ander. All in all, given all that mentioned, cities are moving forward towards circular economy, and Circular is a project that accounts for that progress. Marco, according to the findings of the project, how are EU regions progressing toward circular economy?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, Francisco. Well, first of all, I would like to make the point that it is very difficult to monitor the progress to circular economy, because there is not one single indicator that can be used to assess the progress. So circular economy is a very fragmented aspect. We have a spectrum of indicators informing on different aspects, from job creation, material consumption and flows, circularity, recycling, waste generation, and regions are progressing towards one or other aspect at different speed and in different way, depending on regional endowment or regional ambition. What worked for one region, or what can be the goal for one region, might not be the same for another region. But this doesn't mean that both are advancing in circular economy. I would like now to provide the example, taking one indicator, which is resource productivity, since before we talked about material consumption. In this case, the indicator is measuring the ability of an economy to produce an economic output with fewer resources. Basically, it is kind of the amount of euro that we are able to produce consuming an amount of kilo of resources. When I talk, more with less. Exactly, doing more with less, this, which is a principle of the circular economy. When I talk about resource consumption, I mean, for example, biomass, material, metals, construction, minerals, and fossil fuel. So we have seen that the difference between rural and urban regions is very big. While urban regions produce 3.7 euro per kilo, rural area are halfway. They are producing kind of 1.5 euro per kilo. And this is quite a big gap. And the problem is that given the patterns, historical patterns, this gap is going to be even wider. Why? Because resource productivity historically has been improved through economic growth rather than reduction in material, in resources. In other words, we haven't been able to really decouple economic growth from material consumption. Let's say that we are keeping material consumption stable and we are increasing the economic output. So if urban regions are the engine of economic growth, for what Ander was saying before, because they are the center of opportunity, job creation, amenities, and people are moving all to city. What's happened? That the rural regions are falling behind in terms of economic benefit. And this is quite a problem because, we already know in other aspects that there is a kind of discontent between urban and rural area in Europe. In terms of material consumption, therefore, it is important to not just look to direct material consumption, but to footprint metrics. Because to have the whole story, let's say, So when we talk about footprint metric, we are considering the environmental burden of consumption, considering the whole life cycle of goods. So in this way, we are kind of accounting for the in flow of import and export of finite good. And what we can understand from this different picture focusing on footprint metric, that in reality, productivity between rural and urban region is not that much, because urban area in reality are consuming much more resources than what can be inferred from direct material consumption. Let's make a simple example. Electric car or a smartphone. So the urban area are the final receptor of these goods, and they account just the weight of these finite goods, finite products, but do not account for all the material that have been processed to produce that good. All those material and environmental impact related to extraction of critical raw material, processing within the industrial system, occur in other regions. Most of the time, for example, rural or intermediate region. So we have a situation, a very unbalanced situation in which we have the rural areas that carry on environmental burden related to extraction or the primary and secondary sector, without benefiting that much from the economic gain which occur in the urban area, which import finite product, do not have the environmental impact related to production, but just to final production. And this kind of unequal, burden sharing between this typology of region. And on the right side, the map on the right side show you the difference between material consumption and footprint metric. And those regions in pink or red tonalities indicate those regions that have a real consumption of good much bigger compared to what direct consumption would say. In other words, those regions are those importing finite good and are shifting the environmental burdens to other areas. So that is why it's very important to have a very comprehensive understanding of the metrics, not just considering one indicator, considering footprint indicator in order to better allocate environmental burdens and economic benefit between different regional typology, and have an inclusive dialogue with all the key actors belonging to the supply chain.
That's very interesting. We have a slide of questions coming in already, and I have one that I want to ask you. So what role do planning policies play in the answers you have given so far? I mean, in the city dynamics around circular economy, to the previous questions, focusing on the development sector and the construction industry. I mean, this is a very specific question for this sector. Maybe we can extrapolate to other sectors relevant to the cities, but who can react to this?
I can give it a try. Yeah, of course. Again, planning policies is key, and this is related to what is the purpose of the circular economy policies that cities and regions are developing. So from our work at the OECD, we observe that if stakeholders are not engaged, the solutions and the implementation time won't take place. So we believe that the cities and regions should conduct a multi-stakeholder process involving not only the private sector, but also the academia, consumers, different levels of government, trying to co-create together these policies, in this case on the construction industry, to move forward and to make these policies a reality. And I would like to come back again to the public procurement. Here, cities have a powerful tool. They have the opportunity to include certain criteria, can be for the construction sector, so they can include criteria for the reuse of materials, resource efficiency, energy efficiency. However, if governments, national and subnational governments, they include this, they define these standards on their own, without considering the technical feasibility and the economic viability of these solutions, then there is no way that these policies and these initiatives can be implemented.
Yeah, it's very clear. I will go again with you, Ander. We have mentioned the cities, regions, the local stakeholders, but let's look now at the bigger picture, Europe. What is Europe doing in regards to this? What are the key initiatives supporting implementation from the European point of view of circular economy at the city level?
So, well, from the OECD program on the circular economy in cities and regions, we have been supporting national and subnational governments for the last 7 years. We do this through what we call policy dialogues, which are multi-stakeholder platforms involving all the key stakeholders in the region we are working for. We also have conducted some thematic and benchmarking case studies to analyze which is the state of the art of the transition. We have also focused on the monitoring of the circular economy, as Marco mentioned, one of the key issues that the governance faces right now. And we also believe on the knowledge sharing. So in the last 2 years, from the OECD, we have been collaborating with the European Commission Circular Cities and Regions Initiative. And this is really important to highlight because the European Commission in the 2020 Circular Economy Action Plan included a dedicated chapter to cities and regions, saying that there is no transition if subnational governments and the subnational level are not on board on this transition. So just very briefly, what we have done, we have provided support to 10 cities and regions in the European Union, trying to keep a balance between the geographic reality, level of advancement, cities and regions. And we have also conducted a study from receiving the results from more than 60 cities and regions in the European Union to understand which is the state of the art of this transition in cities and regions in the European Union. And these are a bit the results that I will share with you. So when we ask about the drivers for these subnational governments to move towards a circular economy, we saw that climate change is the main driver, followed by the economic growth and economic activity. Then we have also observed, compared to the results from a study we conducted in 2020, that there has been some progress. So in 2020, when we asked out the levels of advancement, the majority of cities said that they were emerging, starting to give the first steps in this transition. Now the reality is that those are more advanced, or at least in progress, meaning that they are starting or they already have a circular economy strategy in place, which is the case for 75% of the respondents to our survey. In terms of the strategies, we have seen that there are different priorities among cities and regions. Some of them have a strong link or focus still on the waste management, but it's true that there are other areas. So for instance, some of them include the circular economy as a way to achieve climate neutrality. This is the case of the city of Oulu in Finland. But others also have other objectives, which are the social inclusion and economic growth. Again, just to give you a broad perspective of which is the state of the art, almost two-thirds of all respondents are including circular economy criteria in their public procurement process. So this can be renting second-hand furniture in their municipality, in the town hall. It could be including criteria, making it compulsory to have spare parts for the repair, and so on. Again, 50%, almost half of the cities and regions already have a dedicated budget to the circular economy, and this is a progress from the results of 2020, when we saw that the existing budget or the money that was spent in actions related to the circular economy was coming maybe from the waste department, or it was, let's say, less defined of what should be done with this money for the circular economy. And then another key tool that we have observed, and which is kind of quite popular and successful in cities, is doing the pilots at a small scale. So they are testing solutions, for instance, at the neighborhood level. So they starting with pay-as-you-throw initiatives at a small scale, and then they are trying to learn from these initiatives, which in theory, or at least from design, they shouldn't have a high risk for the implementation, but it's a good way also for these cities and regions to learn and to test also which is the reality in the municipality, which is the response from businesses and from citizens. However, I would like to share some of the problems that we have observed in this study, saying that the main problems for cities and regions are related to the governance. And we are talking about the regulation, we are talking about financing, and we are talking about data. We have many times, it happens that cities, even if they want to reuse certain kind of materials, they are not allowed, because legally reused material from construction is considered as waste. And so this is one of the main complaints they have, of course, that national or EU frameworks, they are not conducive to circular economy innovation, let's say. Data, of course, the European Commission has the circular economy monitoring framework, but when you start looking at how to measure progress at the local level, most of the indicators available, at least in municipalities, are related to the waste management, which at the end can somehow give a misleading view of level of advancement towards the circular economy if you are measuring it based only on indicators on the waste management. And then the financing dimension, which is also quite important for cities and regions, which usually have like tight budget, and still there are no indicators about the benefits in the long term about the circular economy. So these are the main problems we have observed. So at the OECD, we have identified these 12 dimensions that are available in the screen, starting by assigning clear roles and responsibilities, stakeholder engagement, strategic vision. So we observe that there is, beyond the technical solutions, which are already there, it's not the biggest problem. Cities and regions should start with the governments, and they could start working on these 12 governance dimensions that we have included in the slide.
Okay, you mentioned one very interesting example of a case of a particularly hard to abate sector that is outside the scope of a city, because national, international regulation, European regulation prevail over the city's intentions and capabilities. What can cities do to influence at these other levels so things can change and they can move forward in circularity?
Well, the key to move forward in these cases is the multi-level governance. So there is a need for coordination between the different levels of governance. As I mentioned at the beginning, cities cannot do this alone. So here, this can be done in many ways. So cities can actively participate in public consultations from the national governments. They can, and they should also involve national governments in the design of their circular economy strategies. And this should be done in a coordinated way. It shouldn't be possible that there are to have a local strategy with objectives that do not necessarily contribute to the national strategy of the national government. So here there should be kind of an alignment, and there are tools. So for instance, should be joint projects between local and national governments, steering committee groups, and also a greater cooperation with other cities and other regions, which, by the way, might face similar problems, to work together and share and give a shared view and a shared response to the national government.
Thank you for your valuable insight, Ander. I would like to launch now a question to both of you, just to spark some debate, and it's about equality. We speak about just transition. How can we ensure a just transition where no region is left behind? And how, or what role can regional cooperation play in this?
Yeah, I will start first. Yeah, I think this is the key question for addressing a circular economy in an effective way. And I think that as Ander was also talking before, explaining before, the key answer is dialogue. Dialogue between key actors involved in the supply chain of different production process and actors from the different governance level. Because what I also see is that most of the time progressing towards circular economy is not about lack of technology or I don't know, breakthrough technology, but it is about engagement and cooperation between all the key actors contributing to a circular solution. And in order to not having nobody left behind, is important to have this dialogue, and then considering, as I said before, a spectrum of indicator, in this case footprint metrics, and also the analysis of how burden are distributed between the key actors across different regional typology, in order to foresee offset scheme, for example, or any other programs that are able to compensate for those that might be worse off from this transition. In this case, I would say the rural areas. And this is also that something in which the European Commission is working on, because more and more we see in the technical specification of a European call or a project, the requirement of calculating, for example, externality, monetizing externality, or addressing the impact by, for example, household income percentile. So having a better understanding of how impact might, results might impact different type of actors across regions, but also within, as Ander was saying before, a single city, but through different household with different income percentiles. So better understanding of how the circular economy will impact recipients, and then dialogue between the key actors.
And what's your take on just transition and regional cooperation? Where are regions now?
Well, of course, the circular economy goes beyond resource efficiency, waste management. It's a driver for innovation, but also job creation. And this is something that all of us should repeat it quite oftenly. However, the transition is not inclusive per se. It's not automatically inclusive. So if we don't take into account the territorial disparities, the outcomes might not be the same in all the places. So it's important to, first of all, do an analysis of who will be the winners, who will be the losers, and who are at the risk of being left behind. So as I mentioned, there is a great potential for job creation. The European Union estimates an increase of 2.5 million jobs related to the circular economy by 2030. Globally, between 9 and 25 million jobs can be created in resource efficiency linked to the circular economy. However, when we observe the latest data, job related to circular economy is still marginal. So according to the data from the European Commission, still only 2.5% of total employment in the EU comes from circular economy sectors. Which is quite similar to the result in 2009, which was 1.9. And again, in most of the cities, in the cities which could be maybe more advanced, this is still below this 20%, the 20%. We should consider and we should acknowledge that there will be winners and losers in this transition. That's the reality, and that the impacts will differ. So if you can see in the slide, and at the OECD Employment Outlook has made an analysis, and according to the data, it seems that those workers that are working in high emission sectors, in case they lose their job, they would suffer a drop in their earnings of 36% over 6 years. However, for workers that don't belong to these high emission sectors, which are working in other industries, the impact is only 29%. I would like also to highlight the fact to ensure, and one of the key issues to ensure this just transition is also the issue of the skills. So here again, those lowest skilled workers are those who are the most exposed to this transition. And again, the high emission sectors are also those who might have the greatest losses in terms of employment. So the skills are important. However, the reality is that the majority of the reskilling, upskilling programs are targeting the higher education and bridging this gap on a skill gap, because it's true that there is the potential to hire those who have lost their jobs in this new employment that will be created by the circular economy. Addressing these skill gaps in the European Union could cost up to 1.7% of the EU GDP. So this is one of the problems. However, another way to tackle and to ensure just transition could be establishing mechanisms, funds that can mitigate this problem. However, to date, the majority of the actions and the schemes available are more focused on phasing out fossil fuels, and they are not particularly or specifically adapted to the shifts in labor due to related to the circular economy. So just to conclude, it will be important that there is an assessment of who loses, which are the sectors that will be most affected, and also which are the areas, the urban and rural areas that will be the most affected. And it's important that there is a tailored territorial approach to the different realities of cities and regions, so there is no one-size-fits-all solution that can help all of them.
Well, this is a very interesting subject, but I'm afraid we are running out of time. I want to thank both of you very much for your insight, Marco and Ander, for your valuable contributions, and to all of you in your audience for your active participation and thoughtful questions. This conversation has clearly shown the importance of territorial approaches to the circular economy and their role in delivering a climate-neutral future. If you'd like to explore more of the territorial dimension of circular transitions, I encourage you to visit the ESPON website and check out the CIRCTER project, which offers rich data, maps, and policy insights. We'll look forward to continuing the dialogue. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the event.